I have the honor of being here with Demetrëa and Rebekah Dewald. They are the filmmakers of Let the Record Show, also founders of One by One Productions. And what I really enjoy reading about the ladies Dewald is that using story as a medium to express perspective and breaking gender norms in every story, because every story is a human story. So outside of race, sexuality, and age, it should never box anyone. So that's something that I am really, truly enjoyed. And thank you to both of you for joining us today.
Thank you for having us. We're really excited to be here. Hello, Houston.
Hello. Yes, me too. I saw Let the Record Show and I was like really blown away because when all of that was occurring and learning the history of the early days of the AIDS outbreak, I was a kid and I was in high school. So a lot of what I saw, now makes perfect sense to me, just seeing a lot of this great artwork, which we'll get into, which brings me to my initial question for you, Demetrëa. Tell us how Let the Record Show came about initially.
Yeah, of course. So I was in college and Rebekah was working at Manhattan Theater Club as the kind of company liaison. What was your exact title?
Company rep.
Company rep. And so she got me, because I was, a poor college student, a job as an usher there, which I did throughout college and then some. It didn't pay well, but I got to see free theater, so it was amazing, and got to work with my mom. And one day an usher showed up who was not our typical ushers. He was an older gentleman, very eccentric, had lots of stories, seemed to know everyone and know everything about New York, and that was Patrick O'Connell. And all of us ushers were just very curious, like who he called himself the ticket girl. He was just had so much personality, and we'd see people coming in and everybody knew him. And we were like, who is this person? And this was in like 2006, I want to say.
Yeah, maybe even 5.
So, it was we were just starting to Google everything. So we're like, oh, we can Google him. So we did, and it came up that he ran the organization that created the Red Ribbon. And that just kind of blew my mind. I was 21. I felt like I was a very aware young adult. My mom had shown me, and the band played on when I was in high school. I was she very much educated me on all this history, and it had never occurred to me that the Red Ribbon was an art project, that was created by a group of artists. And I felt like if I didn't know, that meant the majority of people my age probably didn't know, and that story needed to be told. And so I talked to Rebekah about it, and I was like, oh, I think it should be a film. And then Rebekah went and told Patrick that I thought it should be a film. And then it just kind of spiraled out. He asked me one day, I was very shy at that point. He was like, oh, why do you think it should be a film? And I was like, deer in the headlights, like, oh my God, he's asking me. And I kind of told him, I just wanted, it was so impactful to me that was an artist symbol, that this symbol that's everywhere in every color was created by a group of artists. And from there, he said, well, it's not my story you'd be telling, it's a group story. So if you want to tell that story. And I was like, okay, well, this is a way bigger project than I thought I could even handle taking on. So Rebekah had always worked in theater. She had directed plays. She just had such a bigger knowledge base. So I asked her if she could partner with me and help me tell this story. And then it took us, 7 years. So it was a good partnership.
Yeah. And you were touching on something that also I was educated on myself. Like I knew about the Red Ribbon, but just the initial stages and just seeing everything that they were going through in that environment, and how they actually got it to be on television for the first time, if I remember correctly, in the Tony Awards in 1991. So that was something that was very significant too, just learning the history and all the phases of like how the ribbon would look like and how accessible it would be. So that brings me to my next question too. It opens with a very powerful art performance about the early days of AIDS. How was the process like finding all these other New York artists in addition to some of the ones that you might have already been in contact with?
Well, Patrick made it very difficult.
Yes.
He would give us names. And even if he had the phone number, he was like, now you have to go and find them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, kind of like if you want this, you're going to have to really work it. And he told us so many stories. We had so many scrawled little notes of names and people. And each person that we'd meet with then, initially I would go and have lunch with them. Demetrëa was young and shy, and so were the other young people on the project. They were and these people they are a bit intimidating even to myself. I would ask them who had influenced them. And the story ended up being a circle of a group of people. So their stories were very interchangeable.
Yeah, it was everyone we interviewed, they would give us probably a list of like 4 or 5 names. And then from there, we would try to get in touch with as many people as we could. And things weren't really archived at all either at that point. So for instance, that piece that you're talking about in the beginning is Karen Finley. And she did that for We Interrupt This Program. We ended up getting like the cassettes just handed to us. It was
like a storage unit in Boston.
A storage unit in Boston. It was like, oh, you want this? Okay, here you go. Here's like a VHS version. Here's the original beta version. Just take it. Nobody cares about this stuff. It was all just things that people were storing under their beds at points. Like nobody had started to unveil this footage yet. So we were really lucky that everybody just opened up. We were a very low budget film. It was made on grants. So we were able to get all of our archival given to us to just use in the film without a fee attached, which became very necessary because Rebekah had to work very hard to get the Tony footage you saw in there. It's this tiny little film. And normally, I think there was 5 organizations involved we had to get releases from. Normally with something like that, you would have to pay money. But we explained to them that we hadn't paid. So we have contracts with them that say as long as we didn't pay for a single piece of archival footage, we could use the Tony footage without having to pay for it. So that kind of became the sense like, okay. So we'd have to really explain that to people. Like, no, even if you're just asking for $50, we can't do that. Like it will negate our contract with the Tonys.
Well, things like on James Wency and that footage, like finding through Google just an address that was supposed to be an office. And it was his apartment.
Yeah, for Diva TV.
For Diva TV, and hunting that down. Like, where is this? It's in an apartment building. It was all a very fun.
It was like a little Easter egg hunt. Yeah, there was no archive. Now so much of it has been put online, digitized, restored since the creation of the film. So it's really great because there's so much of it more out there now.
Yeah, and a lot of what was discussed too just was eye-opening. Like, for example, the director of Art Matters, C. Brown, was mentioning that there were art installations that could be eaten. John Kelly talks about Marsha P. Johnson's early activism. How important is it to convey to newer generations the impact of how activism works, would you say?
I feel like it hopefully gets that across. I mean, that was definitely one of the goals, to make it clear that like activism works by coming together, by doing it. That's the only way to make activism work, is you just have to go out there and do it. And that if you use art, it can be such a powerful tool.
Yes, we care. And the other thing is, change your behavior. If you're using prone to cause AIDS, change the behavior. Next thing I know, one of these ACT UP groups is out saying Bush ought to change his behavior.
Maybe next week I'm gonna meet ya. I'll meet ya.
You can't talk about it rationally. That the extremes are hurting the AIDS cause.
Stop killing us! Stop killing us!
To go into a Catholic Mass in a beautiful cathedral in New York under the cause of helping in AIDS and start throwing condoms around in the Mass. I'm sorry, I think it sets back the cause. We cannot move to the extreme.
Stop it! Stop it!
So hopefully I mean, you watched it. We're very biased when we watch it.
Also, it's taught in quite a few universities consistently. for art students and for students we've had medical students watch it. We've had, just a big diverse political science students. A lot of different teachers reach out to us, and they have found it very worthwhile. They usually show it with Paris is Burning. And they really gives a part of the history that people don't know about. And it really gives young people a chance to think about forming their own voice and what they care about. And that is who we made it for, was really to continue through younger generations, so that even though that generation was very interrupted, and you really can see that in this, that we have less than when we started with, because we've lost some of the people in the film since the film, but there is not a huge community of artists from that time period. And so there was a continuum that was broken, and to give back as much of that as we can.
Yeah, and a lot of the phrases too, a lot of the art that was created during that time, like silence equals death. I remember seeing that in my high school. Like I would see kids like carrying a lot of this art, great art, like, Keith Haring, just to name, one New York artist, but just a lot of the artwork that really was significant for that time, and telling that story of like what it was like. And then having, I believe it was December 1st, that was a day without art or artists.
Day without art.
A day without art. Yeah, how impactful that was for that period. So tell us a little bit about the archive of Let the Record Show, like, for example, what that process is like too.
So like we said, we've got so much art was given to us, so to use throughout the film, and people really just wanted these artists out there. So we have Tom Warren's photographs. We have Bill Costa, which was a photographer who now has started to have some art shows. At that point was pretty unknown, and Alan Frame wanted us to put out there. We have all of so much Diva TV footage. Wincy has been amazing at opening up his archive to us, and really appreciates how we use it in the film. Feels like it's one of the most honest approaches to telling the history. We Interrupt This Program, which was a television series created in conjunction with A Day Without Art. So it was kind of the public access series that was created to go with that. And then we have a ton of interviews. So we did, I want to say I'd have to count up.
I think it was 18. I really do.
Somewhere between 13 to 18 interviews. And we only included a handful in the film because it became too many voices. It was at a point we decided we have to kind of pick the main storytellers, because it's already a lot of people who are seen in the film. Otherwise it would be too confusing. So we really want to, like, a lot of these interviews, they're amazing. Most people we interviewed, it was the first time they'd been asked to reflect on that time period. So they're very, very,
all of them.
Yeah.
So they had never been asked.
They had never been asked. It didn't seem like anybody cared at that point. And now, like, since that, of course, more documentaries have been made, but for them, this was the first time. I mean, like Penny says in the film, she hadn't ever mourned until this film. That because we sat down and asked her, it gave her that space to mourn. So we really are working right now on taking all these interviews, and we've been thinking about it for years and keep putting it off, but people keep being so connected to the film. We keep getting requests like from you guys in Houston, which is like the biggest compliment, Melanie having seen it in 2015, and now it's 2022, and she still wants this film shown. So it really shows us how much people connect with this, that we want to start a online digital archive where you can see these clips and excerpts from all the interviews, see more of the archival footage, really put it out there using social media and a YouTube series channel to kind of create and put out the archive for everyone. And we'll be launching that starting in 2023.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, because there was a lot that I learned about the documentary myself too. Like they were touching on some very important information, such as with activism, it's like an everyday thing. There is no break, because I think with activism, the way it works is that it's a continuous cycle, just because of what was going on during that time and then things that we're seeing currently in our current environment today. So yeah, they were touching on some things that resonate a lot, especially those of us that are part of that community too. So tell us your thoughts about the underground art culture and indie film in the future, how you see it.
Ooh, surviving, I hope.
Hopefully surviving. It's such a hard time we're in for film right now. Like, as indie filmmakers, we talk about this a lot. It's this quagmire of the equipment. Everything is more accessible. It's easier to make and tell your stories than ever and harder to get them to the audience than ever. So how do you take these two things and put them together? Like we're really at a point, we've just finished our second film, which is a very strange dystopian little kind of very guerrilla style film. And we found it's not, even when we applied to underground film festivals, it's such an underground film, it lost out to more mainstream films and these underground film festivals. And it was like, okay, so the voice for these. You can put anything on YouTube, but what does that do then? As a filmmaker, you make no money. You're just giving away your art, which you put your life into. Otherwise, I mean, the Amazon self-distribution program is a joke. You make, I think it's like, what is it, like 3 cents for every 90 minutes of your film that's streamed?
Wow, yeah.
That's a way to make $1 in a year. Like, just like, it's really at this hard point where I think I'm noticing more independent VOD and SOD, SVOD streaming things coming out, and hopefully that changes it. I don't know though. It seems like we're at such a hard point of there's so much out there. How do you connect with the audience? We can make the art, but how do we get it out to the audience? Film festivals are a way, but they're really, they cost, what people I don't think realize is if you're an independent filmmaker, it costs a lot of money to do festivals. Every festival has an application fee, except for Qfest in Houston did, which was always amazing. We love Qfest. But everyone has an application fee. You spend hundreds of dollars doing that, and then you're the one who has to do all the PR for it. So if you don't have a PR person, you can't afford that, how are you even getting the press out there for the film? It's a very challenging time we're in.
And that's even with documentaries, like talk about narratives, and you look at unions and the fees, and anybody can make a film, but can they? Anybody who has money in their pockets. So I think you have a lot of people getting to play in it where maybe it's not their passion, but they can play as filmmakers because they have the money.
Right.
It costs narrative projects incredibly expensive.
It is, and even if you do it like with no money, because you can, then how do you get it to the audience?
Yeah.
What is the best way to get these films out to the audience? So if you have any ideas, we're very open.
Yeah, you know, I'm glad you're mentioning all that too, because I myself, having gone to different film festivals, and I myself going down that route with, you know, producing a short film along with my colleagues, one thing I realized too is like what I even saw in the documentary is that word of mouth is still very powerful even today, like with social media and the internet. And that's one thing I learned by watching Let the Record Show too, is that I think the more you put it out there and you go to different events, maybe the less costly it'll be too, because I feel that word of mouth still works today. And I think even what the world was going through during the pandemic showed us that as well. So just, you know, going to wherever you might go and network and say, oh, hi, by the way, you know, this is this documentary piece and this is what we're trying to do. And I think that's also another successful avenue that has worked before. So yeah, it might work for you now.
We try.
Yeah.
Great, powerful tool. We're horrible at social media. We're trying to get better with it because that is kind of the modern day word of mouth.
Right.
Towards it. I mean, we're filmmakers, we're not social media people, but now it's seeming like they have to go in conjunction, hand in hand.
Right.
Hopefully, in this archive, we're able to use our minor amount of social media skills to get it out there, because that's all we really care about is people getting to see this history.
Yes. It's very important.
Self-promotion is a big thing. We're trying to get better at that. It's definitely an area that feels uncomfortable to us to self-promote, but I think you have to as an artist.
It's easy for us to form collaborations with people. That part is easy. When we're talking about projects we're going to do and meeting people we want to work with, that part comes easy. The audience part is, I think, our hardest part.
Yeah,
collaborations, especially because there's so many groups of artists that want to, you know, make something come to fruition and have everyone see it. Very similar to what the documentary was showing us too with the artists. So tell us a little bit about the Ladies Dewald, because I had a chance to check out the website. So I just want to know a little bit more about that.
well, we kind of formed it. I mean, we started making Let the Record Show together, and then we realized how much we just always wanted to make films together. Like through doing that process, we were like, okay, this is our passion. Rebekah's the one who turned me on to cinema at a very young age. She's been a cinephile her whole life. And she wanted to make films, but didn't feel like, as growing to college in the 70s, didn't feel like that was something you could just do as a woman. It didn't seem that accessible.
I didn't see any women directors in film, so I did theater. I love both. I think both of us are passionate about both forms. And so I did much more work in theater because film was a boys' club. It really was. And there was just not an easy way in at that point. And it really changed with Demetrëa's generation.
Yeah, and we've written numerous scripts together, most of them not produced, but hopefully produced in the future. Always, I think that's also the game, like flirting with producers, trying to get right. It's like the dating scene it feels much harder than the dating scene to try to woo a producer into producing your film. A lot of scripts, we really try to, like you saw on our website, playing with gender and those different things. We've started to write in the last couple of years gender neutral scripts, which we found very interesting. We really like that concept.
It's very out of the box. It's hard for some people to understand when they read it, but we really feel like you should be able to play as a director with who you see in that role, be it a man, a woman, be them older, be them younger. And it changes things. And when everything is constrained by the roles that we put on people, you write characters like that. When you take those away, you're writing people and you're writing experiences that happen throughout life. And it's very freeing to us.
It is. We've also noticed, though, through showing some of our gender neutral scripts to people gender the characters.
Yes.
So they'll refer to a character as a gender, and we're like, oh, that's interesting. So that character is a woman to you because they're only referred to as they and by their name.
Right.
And we just assumed, and we're like, yes, because we still put those things on people. So I feel like the more we can break those boundaries, we really came to that with our last film, because it was such a guerrilla style film and we just wanted to work with amazing people. We had one character that we'd written through our workshops for this one actress. And the character's name was Betty, and it was like a very proper, she ran the gallery in the film. And she had to drop out of the film. So then we were like, oh, we have to recast. And we really wanted to work with this actor, VJ Cash, who's just this brilliant actor. And we've been approaching him about some smaller characters that we still had to cast. And then when she dropped out, we went to him and we said, hey, what do you think of the character Betty? And he was like, I love that character. And he's like, what would their name be? And we said, Betty. And he was like, that's amazing. I'm so in. I want to be Betty so badly. And through doing that and it changing but leaving those elements, it was like magic watching that happen. So that really brought us to wanting to write more gender neutral scripts.
And we didn't change any of the writing. The script didn't change.
No, we didn't change a word.
Yeah, that's great to hear, because I noticed that too with a lot more film nowadays. It seems like more projects are going down that route, a very genderless, non-binary energy to the project. So that's really nice to hear that, something that I guess initially was written as a Betty character, then this actor really blew you away with their performance, right? So that's great to hear, because I think that gives also a lot more talent in front of the camera, as well as behind the camera opportunities to really work on projects. So, especially when you make it open to everyone. So I think those are very important things. How can everybody follow you guys on social media?
Well, we have an Instagram, the Ladies Dewald. That's our group Instagram. And then really, if you're interested in Let the Record Show, we haven't fully launched the archive campaign yet, but we do have the Instagram is a live Instagram page. So people start to follow that. That's where starting early next year, we're going to be starting to release all of the archive onto. So it's, I believe it's Let the Record Show Film at Instagram. And
which is our website as well.
Yeah, which is the website as well. And that's just the best way to follow and stay up with that project that's coming out. And then we will be, if you do follow the Ladies Dewald, sharing everything onto that as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much, because now I'm going to be following. I'm
Oh.
going to be following you guys. Yeah, do you have any final thoughts over the Let the Record Show documentary? Because I made my notes of everything that was mentioned. One thing that I found really interesting is that during that time, because they were talking about a specific time, 81 and 96, there was no AIDS memorial or even parade to honor a lot of the lives until much later, you know, with showing the gown with all the people that have left us. Anything you want to add as far as like Let the Record Show that maybe the audience might not know?
Well, we have lost two of the people in it during COVID. So we lost Patrick O'Connell, who was our family. We spent so much time and continue to after the film. And we also lost Hunter Reynolds.
Who's the one in the dress?
And he was a good family friend as well.
We just lost him last year, so that's been very hard.
And both of them, I would say, were Patrick died of AIDS-related illnesses. People don't understand that people living with AIDS who were infected at that time, who are living with it, are they're not living with PrEP. They're living with a arsenal of medication that is constantly changing, and they're just alive through pharmaceuticals. And it's going to get them in the end. They just can live longer now.
Right.
And that is one thing that I think people are not aware of, that you can still get AIDS and it can end up being the same as AIDS was back then. And we say that in the film, but that hasn't really changed, because
if you don't have, like Roger McFarlane says at the end of the film, if you aren't aware and you don't have access, which is so much of the world, it's the same thing. It's still a horrific disease that takes your life brutally.
Or if your community doesn't accept and you're closeted, that your likelihood is so much higher. Certain communities, it's still very stigmatized at this point. And those are the communities that are usually the lowest in economics, need the most support and need the information. And I don't think it's out there readily available as much. I think people feel like it's over.
And we really want the film to be used. That's always been the goal of it. And we're hoping to it was never completely finished. So we never had a final score or color correction done. We're hoping to raise some money in the next year to be able to get that done and get proper educational distribution for it. Because we think, I know these stories, these are our mentors of this time. I was lucky enough that I was 21 and I got to sit down and have these mentors teach me everything through these interviews and through conversations afterwards. It was an amazing learning ground of how to use art, how to use your voice. These tools, even if it's not the AIDS crisis that you're fighting for, they can be applied to anything going on. And we're living in such a strange, hard time where we saw, once again during COVID, the need to be able to spread compassion. How do you teach people about compassion? And that's one of the biggest things that they were able to do through something like the Red Ribbon. They were able to spread compassion. So I think if we can keep learning these lessons from our mentors, from these people of our past, and not let that history get lost, and not view it as just, yes, they protested, but they did so much more than just going to the streets and protesting. And one thing they did in protesting, which will come out in the archives, we kind of veered away from ACT UP because we had an earlier cut that had a lot about ACT UP, because we were like, oh, people really need to know this history. And then one of our advisors on the film is this amazing editor, Brian Cates. And he also gave advice to how to survive a plague. So he said, when he watched our earlier cut, he was like, there's another film coming out really focused on ACT UP. You don't need to do that now. Focus on the art. But one thing that was amazing that they did during ACT UP was they had plans. So it wasn't a protest just because they were angry. It was a protest of, these are the outcomes we want to see happen. And I think the more we can learn from that, if we are going to be going to the streets and protesting, what are the exact outcomes we hope for our government to do? What are the aims of these exact actions?
Yeah, and like you were saying, art is a very powerful medium. And it can be used not just for activism, but for a lot of things to get to people in many parts of maybe society and the world that might be closed off. So yes, I just want to thank both of you for taking the time to talk to us today about this very important film, Let the Record Show. And I'm going to be following you guys like crazy on social media. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
You bet.
Thank you.